James St. Patrick didn't grow up dreaming of becoming a drug kingpin. In fact, everything about him suggested he could have taken a very different path. He was smart, calm under pressure, and always thinking several steps ahead. Even when he was young, people noticed that he was different from everyone around him. While others reacted with anger or emotion, James observed quietly. He watched how people moved, how they spoke, and how power really worked on the streets of New York. This ability to read people became one of the most important tools he would ever have. But intelligence alone doesn't create someone like Ghost. The environment around him played a huge role. Growing up in a tough part of the city meant that survival often depended on choices that most people never have to make. Every day he saw how money controlled everything. Respect, safety, opportunity. They were all connected to power. And power in that world often came from the drug trade data first. James wasn't the loudest or the most aggressive person in the room. In fact, that's exactly why people underestimated him. Many of the young men around him chased reputation. They wanted people to fear them immediately. But James thought differently. He understood that real power was quiet. Real power moved in the background. This mindset slowly separated him from the rest. While others focused only on today, James thought about the future. He began learning how the business actually worked, who supplied the drugs, who moved the money, who protected the operations. These were things most people ignored, but James paid attention to every detail. Over time, he started to understand that the streets were not just about violence. They were about strategy. There were also key people in his life who pushed him deeper into that world. One of the most important was Tommy Egan. Tommy was almost the complete opposite of James. Where James was calm and calculated, Tommy was emotional and fearless. But together they formed a powerful partnership. Tommy handled problems with force, while James handled them with intelligence. Their friendship started long before the Empire fans saw in power. As young men, they learned the streets together. They made mistakes together. And most importantly, they began building trust that would later become the foundation of their entire operation. But even during those early years, James was already thinking about something bigger. Unlike many people in the drug world, he didn't want to stay there forever. He wanted control. He wanted legitimacy. This is where the seeds of the Ghost identity began forming. The idea of living two lives didn't appear suddenly later in the series. It was already growing inside him from the beginning. On one side, James understood the streets and knew how to dominate them. On the other side, he imagined a future where he could step into the world of business, politics, and influence without anyone knowing his past. This vision was rare in the environment he grew up in. Most people believed once you entered the streets, you were trapped there forever. But James refused to accept that rule. He started learning how wealthy and powerful people operated. He studied the way legitimate businesses worked. He paid attention to how money moved through legal systems. These ideas slowly shaped the man he would become. The nightclub empire, the connections with powerful figures, and the ability to move between two completely different worlds were not random developments. They were part of a plan that had been forming long before anyone ever heard the name Ghosty. Still, none of this explains the moment that truly changed him. Intelligence, ambition, and environment may have started the journey, but they didn't create Ghost. Something else happened along the way. Something that forced James to stop being just a smart young man with potential and become someone far more dangerous. And if Power Origins really dives into his past, fans may finally see the exact moment when James St. Patrick realized that survival in his world required more than intelligence. It required becoming invisible, untouchable, and impossible to predict. That was the moment the legend of Ghost truly began. The moment that truly started changing James St. Patrick did not happen in a loud or dramatic way. It happened slowly, through small experiences that kept showing him the same lesson again and again. On the streets, Loyalty could disappear overnight. One mistake could destroy everything you built. And the people who survived the longest were not always the strongest. They were the ones who knew how to stay unseen. This idea began shaping the way James moved, while others were focused on being known. James was focused on being invisible. That difference is what later created the identity the world would fear as Ghost. In the early days of his rise, James and Tommy Egan were already becoming well-known in certain parts of New York. Their operations were growing, and more people started recognizing their names. For many people in the drug world, that recognition felt like success. Being feared meant respect. But for James, attention felt dangerous. The more people talked about you, the easier it became for enemies or the police to track your moves. He realized something important that many others ignored. Power is stronger when nobody knows where it comes from. This realization slowly pushed James toward a different strategy. Instead of being the visible leader, he began creating distance between himself and the actual operations. He allowed other people to appear as the faces of certain deals. He stayed behind the scenes, watching everything while others took the spotlight. At first, even Tommy did not fully understand why James preferred to stay hidden. Tommy believed that fear and reputation were the most powerful tools on the streets. But James was already thinking far beyond the streets. He was thinking about survival in a world where law enforcement, rival crews, and betrayal were always waiting for the right moment. As the business expanded, James started building systems. Instead of relying only on muscle, he studied how successful organizations worked. Money needed to move quietly. Communication needed to stay controlled. Every step had to look normal to anyone watching from the outside. These ideas were not common in the environment he came from, but they were the foundation of what later became his empire. This was the early version of the strategy fans saw in Power when Ghost ran both a nightclub and a massive drug network at the same time. Another important change during this period was the way James controlled his emotions. Many people in his world made decisions based on anger or pride. Those reactions often started wars that destroyed entire crews. James watched these situations carefully and learned from them. He understood that emotions were dangerous when power was involved. If someone insulted him or challenged him, he rarely reacted immediately. Instead, he waited, observed, and chose the moment that gave him the biggest advantage. This patience made him extremely difficult to predict. Slowly, the people around him started noticing something unusual. James could enter a room full of powerful figures, listen quietly, and walk away already knowing how every person could be useful in the future. Some people controlled territory through violence, but James controlled situations through understanding. He paid attention to weakness, ambition, fear, and greed. Every person had something that could be used, and James learned how to recognize it quickly. This ability turned him into more than just another player in the drug game. It turned him into a strategist. During this time, the idea of the name Ghost began to make more sense. The name was not only about secrecy, it represented a new way of moving through the world. Ghost could appear when necessary and disappear before anyone understood what had happened. Deals could happen without anyone knowing who was really responsible. Money could flow through businesses that looked completely legitimate. And when problems appeared, the real mastermind behind everything remained untouched. But this new identity also created distance between James and the life he originally imagined. The deeper he moved into this hidden world, the harder it became to return to a normal path. Every smart decision that protected his empire also tied him more tightly to it. Even when he started dreaming about a legitimate future, the system he had built was already too powerful to simply walk away from. This is why the transformation into Ghost was not just about survival. It was about control. James believed that if he could stay invisible, he could control every part of the game without becoming its victim. And for a long time, that strategy worked perfectly. Rivals fell without ever seeing him coming. Authorities chased the wrong people. His empire grew stronger while his real identity stayed protected. But the more perfect the ghost persona became, the more dangerous it was for James himself. Living two lives meant carrying secrets that could